the education situation. And so we'll continue talking about it. We will continue to speak about it. We will continue to look for the solutions while we can. And we're going to further that conversation this morning. Janet Oko is an education expert and director of Tunzam Toto Coalition. We're looking at now the issue of free education, whether it's free or not, and we'll touch on rethinking Kenya's education revolution. Janet, good morning.
Good morning, Do.
How are you?
I am all right, thank you.
You're in one piece.
I am.
You're here.
I can confirm.
Okay. Because we hear things.
I know.
So we need to confirm that the boogeyman hasn't gotten you, and that you're here, and we can be bold to speak.
No, it's part of the struggle. It's part
Absolutely.
of the struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we refuse to be silent when anybody is trying to defund education. We shall not be silenced.
Janet Oko is here, and for all intents and purposes of this conversation, just to so that we are saying that we're glad that you're safe for a reason, and anybody can deduce from that, right? Before we get into our conversations for this morning, Dennis is going to share today's proverb with you and where it's from, and then we'd like your interpretation of that.
The proverb comes from Uganda, and Uganda has around 50 ethnic groups, and one of the largest include the Baganda, Banyankole, Acholi, Basoge, and Bakiga. But Ugandans have this dance, and based off what I was just reading online, some of the best dancers are when they shake their waist, actually men. Ugandan men actually know how to shake their waist, so it's just for conversation, please.
Okay.
Yes, but let's go to a proverb. Bindu, you want to say something? Okay, Sawa. Our proverb: a person who has not traveled thinks their mother is the best cook. A person who has not traveled thinks their mother is the best cook. What do you make of that?
Oh yeah. Let me not say what I wanted to say, but it's rather a more straightforward proverb, especially revolving around food. I'm sure everybody has had some experience with it, and so it's not a very difficult one to decode. But I think for me, it's about exposure, and I like talking about exposure as to especially how it relates to things that we feel very personal about. Some of us feel very personal about our tribes, and some of us think that just because we belong to a particular tribe, our tribe is superior. And please get out there and just sample, see what other people do and what other people practice, and then you will realize no, they are great people out here, and I say that because I'm very proud of intermarriages. Because if you listen to the stereotypes that people push around, sometimes you listen to someone and you wonder, you just needed to travel just a little, not outside the country. Just take a bus.
I keep saying just Kitengela.
No. Yeah, because it's crazy how people hold certain stereotypes and how people treat other people as inferior just for the mere reason that you were born in a certain region. No, you just need to travel a little.
There's a tribe that showed up June 25th who said, we are tribeless and we are leaderless. And look at the change they brought
about. That is the revolution that we're talking about. It has so much rubbish.
Yes.
Those people that hang on to tribes. And I can bet you, I think now the majority, because I don't know that my children either know whether they are Luo or they are Kikuyu. And I'm very proud about that. And it limits my husband and I from talking about the way watu wa Mlima would want to speak Mlima, and because there is no place, there is no audience, no one appreciates.
Well, there you go, and those are the truths, isn't it?
Total.
The last time we had a conversation with you, we then went on to have another conversation around education, and we've been trying to do this as often as we can, because we are not staring a disaster in the eye. We are not staring and saying it's coming. We are living in it at the moment, and whether we are going to be accused of being sensationalist or not, so be it. That's fine. I think that when it comes to the children and their education, again, as the very pillars of society, moving forward, that we cannot play Russian roulette with their future. And unfortunately, it seems as though we've been doing just that. There are certain things that have come out in the last couple of days, and the Cabinet Secretary for Education has been quite forthright, where he has basically said, we do not have money to fund education in the manner in which it is currently on paper and the manner in which we would like to do. He has basically said this.
No.
He has accepted the fact that there is 60 billion shillings owed. He has accepted the fact that they just don't have enough money to go around. He has acknowledged that these issues exist. Now, what we didn't expect to come from that acknowledgement was the possibility of defunding education even further, whereby we talk about exams will not or will be paid for. We're still not sure what's going to happen with that. But now we are looking at a time where 20 years after free education was established, that we could be looking at a place where we are going to ask Kenya's parents to start to pay school fees again, because there is no money. That's where we are today. Your take?
You know, when I watched the CS for education, really sweating and trying to put up with the drama that the members of parliament were trying to show up. I say drama because I am not expecting someone like Honorable Meli to be asking the kinds of questions that he was asking the CS. Why? Because Honorable Meli has hung around for the longest time. He has chaired the education committee, even when things were working out. And for me to listen to him asking the minister some questions, I would call that harassment. This drama that members of parliament subject people to is so much uncalled for. Meli knows where the money is. Meli knows the person who is making the decisions to send money to schools. Meli knows that it is Bitok who is making those decisions. It is William Ruto that is making those decisions. So sometimes stop harassing professionals. And I don't know if the minister still has his job, because it's very hard for a CS education to admit that we do not have the money. You know, probably that was not the brief. But out of the pressure and out of really wanting to be honest and telling Kenyans, look, people, I mean, you know, this is the math that I can say, and this is the math that I can do. But then, and we have said severally that the decision of funding education is not made at the Ministry of Education. Let Kenyans know that decision is not for Waziri Ogamba. It is not. That is a decision for the president. It is the president who decides what is my legacy. What priorities do I want to engage in? And number two, at what point do we start telling Kenyans that we do not have money? These are the same Kenyans that it is William Ruto who has decided that now empowerment, some moribund things called empowerment, have a higher profile now than funding education. And I want to tell him today, there is no empowerment program more than a well-resourced school, more than a trained teacher, and a child with hope. Every other thing you're doing is called shenanigans. It is for your political expediency. You are the only person that knows the criteria of the people you're taking to those posho meals. You're the only person who knows the source of this money for buying those posho meals and all those swing machines. Is that what Kenyans have told you they needed? And the answer is no. Do things for your siasa. We understand you. But hey, we refuse, especially when we know this is our money. This is tax money that we are speaking about. We are not asking for his benevolence. No. This is tax money that we are speaking to. In fact, money which he has even obtained by force from Kenyans. Some Kenyans don't want to be taxed in the manner that they are taxed. But do they have a choice? They don't have a choice. So you decide to tax us by force, and then you decide to take another motivational book from where you want to run this country. No, we are insisting. We decided as Kenyans in the year of the Lord 2010, and we gave ourselves a constitution. We do not want anybody to think of what transforming this country would look like. Transforming this country looks like remaining faithful to the constitution that we give to ourselves.
Okay. When we talk about, I want to, for purposes of definition, because I think sometimes we do get crossed lines. When we talk about free education, when we say free, that means free to the person who is sending this child to school. That if as a parent you send your child to school, there is nothing coming out of your pocket for this child to be in school. The government, through whether it is a subsidy manner or making payments directly to schools, then your children, what they need to do is leave their homes and go to school. That is what we mean by free education, is it not?
Free does not mean no cost. No.
Okay.
Free does not mean no cost.
Okay.
But it costs to who? We are saying that the constitution that we gave to ourselves has indicated that there is no child that should pay anything to access
Education.
Basic education. The Basic Education Act goes further to call it compulsory. It means that anybody that has a child in the house right now, as we are speaking, it is going towards 9:20. If you have a child in the house right now, you are committing an offense. And you ought to be arrested and arraigned in court for why you are not implementing the law. So some of these things are so serious. And when we see the simplicity and you know, and the way the president is going around these issues, you almost want to ask him, what is your legacy? What legacy do you want to leave behind? We cannot sit here and educate him about what education can do. We have evidence. We saw. And I want to tell him these Gen Zs that he's struggling with is as a result of another man that believed in education and put every child in this country to school. It is very hard, by the way, for you to walk around and see a Form 4 dropout, like in the last 3 years or so. You hardly got. In fact, there was a time in this country where people did not have house helps because there were no people that were falling out at Form 2, Form 1, you know, like it were norm in the past. It got to that point. It is a place where we are proud to have been, and it is a place where we refuse to make any step back because it will amount to injustice. Education is an equalizer. We are not we are not saying that if everyone here on this table could give an account of themselves, I can at least say that I know so many children that I went to school with, but I came from a family of privilege. My father was a teacher, you know, and so that is how he managed to, because that time education was not free. There was school fees and so on. And so I know so many of very brilliant children that are my age mates that we went to school together that dropped out at class 8. They did not make it to Form 1, 2, and 3. It is not that I'm extraordinary or I'm more intelligent than anybody else, but my parents gave me an opportunity. That is what we are saying. No, it should not be about those who have against those who have not. This is a universal right, and for the avoidance of doubt, this is not a Kenyan issue. It is an international declaration. Education is a human right. So we're not really, you know, I get so tired of sitting to argue with people and looking like we are begging. We are saying no. We have to get to a place as Kenyans and wonder how are we running? How is this country being run? I listened to the interview with is it AKI, brilliant lady that has left here, and she put a thought in my mind. She said, if you think that your retirement benefits are not being managed well, you can go to she said RBA, the authority, and petition the authority. And the authority, there's something, she said that there's something that the authority can do. The authority can ask you to stop making
those payments,
is it? And at least so that now we deal with the bulk of what now you had remitted, but has stopped you from further wasting your money. And I wondered, this is our money, this is our tax money that is being mismanaged right in our side. Can we petition ourselves also? We do not want to continue funding somebody who does not want to take money where we have all agreed. He has his priorities. Let him do that with his money. When we get a president who will be ready to do what the citizens of this country want, we are happy to continue paying taxes. Can we have that option?
And Janet, you bring something in terms of a priority. And when we talk about education and the current dispensation, we go back to during the campaign period and the manifesto and the promises that the president said. And I'll just go through that. He said he will bridge the teacher shortage gap of 116,000 within 2 financial years. And then there is the issue of improving capacity of day secondary schools to guarantee access to quality education and reduce the cost of education. It is not me, it is what he said in his manifesto. But here we are today where we say the funds that he said he would put in place to ensure that free education is funded is no longer there. Now we're talking about we're unable to fund exams. We're talking about an education system who's in the last budget got the highest allocation of 634 billion shillings, 56 billion. And we speak today in terms of the pending bills that do exist, and one asks the question, Mr. President, where did you lose the priority that education is important for the children of Kenya?
No, I think that when there's some sectors that really require thought. Every morning when you wake up in education and health, there's usually just something new that you need to either interrogate the policy further, but it appears for me in this government that people are not thinking. And thinking is not to mean that they don't have ability to think. No, it's like they're not settling down to really interrogate. Because education is not something that you say, today we are doing this. No, you probably need a settled 3-year or 4-year plan to say that this is what we are doing. So that if you think about the effects of what Mwai Kibaki did, he did not even realize those fruits in the 5 years or in the 4 years. We are now living the effects of that investment and that sacrifice that someone else did. And so when you think about the effect of a child dropping out of school today, and then there is all this maneuvering, and the mother goes to plead, and that child has wasted a week.
Indeed.
They've probably wasted two weeks of learning. So when I'm looking at the wastage of resources, I am not just looking about the 656 billion Kenya shillings. I am wondering, that 656 billion Kenya shillings, is it being put to generate the quality that it ought to give us? Why? Because there is no continuity of it. One time it comes, the other moment it doesn't come. Teachers are keeping learners in school just for the sake of it, because when you send away learners, you will give the government a bad name. So they'd rather all be here, even that we don't have chalk, even that we don't have textbook, they'd rather just be here. And I'm asking the president for sure, is this your legacy? Is this your legacy? Why I refuse to buy the narrative about fiscal space and all this yada yada yada, is we are seeing empowerment. There's some things that are called empowerment that are now coming up to compete with non-sustainable and practiced efforts that can pull this country from every corner without discrimination. But we are now seeing empowerment has money. Nobody is talking about fiscal space, debt distress when it comes to buying portion mills and swing machines and tractors and wheelbarrows.
There's money there.
There's money. There's money for that. And at that particular point in time, nobody seems to be talking about it. And I'm wondering, where, as you rightly saying, fidelity to your own manifesto that you actually put up. I had actually never read it. I'm not a believer in political party manifestos. I am a strong believer in the Constitution, because there is no document in this country that is stronger and it captures all our aspirations that the Constitution does. And so looking at the president today, and I would want him to have these conversations and realize I am lifting this conversation to the level of president, because there is nobody else. Nobody else has an explanation as to why 4.3 billion today has been slashed from the education budget. No one has an explanation as to why 600 billion Kenya shillings has been slashed from the school feeding program. But someone has an explanation as to why Nairobi will be spending 1.2 billion shillings on school funding, on school feeding,
School feeding, the money that has been slashed is 600 million.
600 million.
Yes.
So if we are saying that we are slashing the school feeding program, why is Nairobi alone spending 1.2 billion on school feeding? Is Nairobi more special? Does Nairobi have more resources than all of us? Points to one thing: people are not thinking. This is not a coordinated thought process of what exactly do we want to do at the end of our 5 years. What is our legacy? What are we contributing to the larger good? Have we thought about these children 10 years to come? I know for a fact in this country there is a child, especially in northeastern and those spaces, where food means everything to those children. If you think about someone stopping food, but to go and take for that mother a wheelbarrow or a sewing machine, just show me what is witchcraft.
Janet, let's try rise above this noise. And I'm just thinking, I'm looking at the capitation cuts and all this versus performance in the education sector. So all these things were not planned for, and suddenly there is money being now reallocated as if there was no plan. Why do you think this was not taken care of in the initial national budget? Is it that there is an end game to this? Because the 600 million that has been proposed to be reallocated to the current DP's residence So there's money for that. There is a thought for something like that. But when it comes to education, which is really key, all of a sudden it's almost like, oh, snap, we didn't factor in the money for this. What do you think is the end game? Just rising above all those
no,
numbers.
and
What do you think is going on?
it is not fair, and that is why I'm saying that we really have to rise up to a more serious conversation than one of throwing words at each other or to each other. And we wonder, what is our place? What is our place as citizens, especially considering, this is our money. I don't know why this is our money.
Yes.
It is our money for starters. It is our money for starters. And you have to realize when we are in 2025, just rolling into 2026. So we are beginning politics. So a lot of these projects that you're likely to see right now having budgets are political expediency. There is no repairs of State House. There is just budgets to be available for handout seekers, so that you are able to sit 5,000 people and dish 5,000 to each and everybody. That is how someone sits down and think that is how they want to use our money, and that is how they want to run our country.
So what do you think is the expected effect of these cuts on performance in public schools? Especially you have large class sizes, fewer teaching resources. What is the eventual effect of this?
I said earlier that we are not going to feel the effect tomorrow. We will not even feel the effect next year. But we will. Every household will feel this effect for an enduring long time. Because by the time there are no resources in a school, by the time the head teachers of this country are as scared as they are, they cannot send anybody home, because you'll give the government a bad name. So everybody folds their hands.
Sure.
And to look at everybody. So if your child gets a D+, if a child gets a D, if your child does not get enough competences as they would have, we collectively lose as a nation. Because remember, this is someone that we want to come and contribute to the conversations we are having nationally. I'm very excited about the Gen Z, because the kind of quality of conversations they brought, they were never seen before. You cannot disassociate the effect of the education that they have gone through from the kind of citizens that they have become. And so I'm saying the effect that why William might escape without punishment is because it is not, education is not like a hospital issue where there is no drug, someone dies. No one is going to die because there is no teacher. No one is going to die because they don't have a textbook. But surely their dreams shall die.
But it's going to be a different kind of death, and that's what we're looking at.
That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
The only thing that is not as alarming is because it doesn't scream, it doesn't shout, it doesn't prick the emotional person as it were if it were a medical emergency.
Let's look at something like this, because we're going to a break in just a little bit. But when we talk about the defunding of education, because you can do whatever you need to do. Put a hat on a pig; it's still a pig, right? We are also in a place where the curriculum is in transition, right? And there are certain things that need to be done. So now if we're in comprehensive school, and then we get to lower secondary school, and then we get to upper, junior school, all of whatever names you want to give it, and then change the whole system and call it, competency-based education. Today, and I'm saying today, Monday, the 9th of June, grade 9 learners begin to pick their pathways for which they will get into next year, grade 10. Now, if you go into the STEM pathway, which we're likely to see that 60 to 70% of the selection will be into STEM, what does that mean? That every institution which offers STEM will have to have every kind of equipment for those science and math courses. It is not a please can we do it tomorrow. It is we have to do it now because you offer the education, right?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about fund, it seems as though it's working at cross purposes with itself, because here we are saying that these things are happening concurrently, whereby we're also defunding the programs across board. Because when we say that exams, you're going to say parents pay for that. When we're saying the likelihood of you not offering this to children anymore, how does it affect the programs for which an entire party went through the country to put these reforms in place in the first? How do we work? Because it seems counterproductive, counterintuitive, all at the same time. How can it actually happen? How can it work?
I do not understand, because the loss is that since 2003, and for about 10-15 years, we were dealing with issues of access. You know, sort of let everybody come back to school, and then we were dealing with the emergencies of the class sizes that were 40 now have 80.
Yes.
I know of schools in Nairobi that had 112, you know. So we were now dealing with the emergencies of saying, how do we expand, you know, how do we, but at least, can every child be inside something called a school? You know, those were the emergencies that we were dealing with. And just when we were settling in to start now talking about quality, now we've achieved so much in access. Can we now start discussing quality? And you saw a lot of reports from NGOs. I remember our children learning, you know, literally civil society organizations going to schools and administering, you know, tests to just wonder, at grade 3, have you achieved the competencies that you ought to? And a lot of thinking went into wondering, now what else do we need to do? And a conversation started about, we do not think that our curriculum really is taking us to where we ought to go. We do not think that it is serving everyone well. We do not think that it is responding to every child's need. And you can almost tell how the journey has gone. And we have enjoyed stability. We have enjoyed the stability in the sector. And even allowing people to sit down and craft together the competency-based curriculum, funding KICD to develop everything and so on. And then we get to this place where it's sort of someone just presses a button, you know, and they decide from nowhere. Now with this one, I think this way, boss, you don't think for everybody, please. Even if you are sharp, you are not gifted in everything. Can you let people also advise you? Can you listen for once when people tell you, no, at this particular point in time, we needed the stability of the sector, every stability that we could get for the sector, because these are children's lives that we are talking about. We do not want to experiment. We want a stable sector that is thinking, we are now going to grade 9. What are the pathways? Sort of that calm. And when people say we surely need some little more resources for this CBC, it is actually true. So it is paradoxical that you tell us that you're supporting the competency-based curriculum and you are defunding
education at the same time.
You're defunding. You don't even appreciate. And we even gave a scenario. We said some of these reforms that have come right now, were they even during our time? You remember when Moi introduced all these subjects, art and craft and so much? All that was very well intentioned, by the way. But the funding was the Waterloo.
Implementation.
The implementation. And it is not implementation in terms of everything else. It is implementation in terms of funding. We were asked to adjust ourselves to art and craft. But that particular teacher did not know how to make a stool herself, did not even know what a date is. We ended up buying stools. We bought stools and we brought for them for the assessment. And we said, and it is well documented, that if we do not fund CBC, we will still end up there. And what happened to the 844, as it were? They went reducing. No, we do not have the resources. Let's do away with art and craft. We do not have resources. Let's do away with music. So we went back and went back and went back until we realized, no, we have gone back to where we were. Why were we coming here? So I want to wonder sometimes that it is said that even if you are advised, you need not take the advice.
You don't have to take everything that
you don't have to take the advice. And so I would wonder, why is the advisor staying put? Therefore, if in every turn you are not utilizing any advice that anyone gives you, probably you could save the taxpayer that little money so that then you can remain yourself. We see you and we know you do not receive advice from anybody because you actually do not need it. But I can bet you from where I sit, the effect of William Ruto's hand in education will be felt from very far. I do not know, and I have not seen, and I have existed in this space, any minister who stares at the camera and tells Kenyans, or any members of the country for that matter, that there is no money to fund education.
Until last week.
Until last week, I have seen it. I have not seen. That is one. We saw the week before, CS Mbadi telling us that there is no money to fund examinations. You know, the boldness must have come from somewhere. And this is why I always say, tone at the top. It is just that William Ruto is not as bold as they are, because they are handmen. They are sent. Go and say this. Let him face Kenyans and tell Kenyans, I am not able to fund education.
And see what will happen.
And see what will happen. Because we are not going to watch you fund everything else apart from what is important. What is important? It is not me saying that it is important. It is that constitution that you swore that you're going to protect. Yes. We are not going to allow you not to fund children, but to watch you buy portion meals and sewing machines and all manner of things using our money.
That's a good place to take a break on this morning. Janet Oko is our guest this hour, and we're looking around about, is it possible that it will get to a time where parents are asked to dig a little bit deeper into their pockets so that children can go to school? It's all happening on the day when grade 9s are making the selection as to which pathways they'll take into 2026, in that year when they become grade 10s. The education issue is another big one that we are facing this morning. We'll take a break and come back after this. Don't go away at 21 minutes to 10. The education that we speak of, we're looking at primary education. We're looking also at secondary education, lower to upper. And then beyond that, we're going to get to university education, whereby they're struggling too. And the Working Party had reforms. And of course, that's when we saw the funding and what needed to happen with that. But it seems as though that has not been sorted out just yet, Janet.
Mm-hmm. And the tragedy that we have right now is that we do not have people that sit down and actually think and plan. You have everybody on the road shows, and you know just noise, and it is so soon. But those in government need to realize that the people's lives need to go on. I want to talk about the new funding model and wonder, we are now waiting for another crisis to come. We're waiting for a crisis because when we start admitting the cohort, we are not sure yet. Are we still going on with the new funding model, or where exactly are we? How much is government going to pay? And the closest we came to knowing that government has got no idea is when we saw COOPS opening the portal and telling people, you can select courses.
Yes.
But they have not put there the cost of programs. That is lack of accountability. Are you afraid? Is the government afraid to say that we have not finished thinking? I have not experienced this dinosaur sort of thinking that you actually need 6 months to sort out something. But you know why? Because the government wants to operate in crisis. Because in crisis, I know, is where you can now be able to blackmail children. You kill a few, so that then you can silence others. But the real thing is you do not want to fund education. And so you're throwing the bulk of burden to the parents. And that is why you're seeing the university students saying, no, we cannot. By the time someone is a university student, they are no longer a child.
Yes.
They appreciate the dynamics of their home. They appreciate that my mother cannot be able to pay. Sometimes some of them have even written and said, I can drop out of school a little, so that I join my mother in her struggle. Because if your mother is for example, how our mama wakufua, and they are washing even in our houses, how do you expect that woman to raise an amount of 300,000 of the fee structures that have been flying, all over the place? And the answer is no, they will not do that. But then we sat down through that committee that was written. Yes. Anyway, there was no point of putting it up in the first place because the recommendations of it have not been implemented, and I am not seeing anybody interested in implementing them. But that will not make some of us keep quiet. We will still continue telling the government on this one for university education, you are wrong. You have not thought about what exactly is ailing our education system, and even when you have thought about it, you do not have the wherewithal, the boldness to confront challenges. And we have seen education sector where leaders have confronted what ailed the education sector in the first place. If we were having turn codes like the way we do, we would still not have been able to crack the exam cheating. But we saw someone sitting at the helm of it and saying, no, this madness has to come to an end. You know what is happening in universities? And when the president sat down, he called the vice chancellors and he was told universities are in debt and And because he doesn't have much time, because of course he has to attend the next church service and he has to be on some roadshow and in some market, he doesn't have time to sit down and wonder, what exactly are you guys saying? Universities are in debt. Debts that did what? Debts that did what? Show me the audit reports. No one has time for that. We are not going to throw money at our problems.
Yeah.
And parents of this country do not have money to throw at universities that got broke. They got broke, and no one knows they got broke doing what. They went for buying sprees. They bought buildings where they bought. Liquidate, sell those buildings, pay up your debts. Because by the time you want to say that the other lie is a new funding model. And what did the new funding model do? A few people sat together on a table like this one, and they decided, let us develop a few indicators, so that then we are going to rank you and you and you and call you, you are band 1, you are band 2. And we are saying this sector has run. Can we build on the ideas that have existed for a long time? This issue of saying, for example, let me give an example with a tea picker from Bomet.
Yeah.
A tea picker who has 3 acres of land in Bomet. They are picking their tea, they have their cow, they are living in their own house. But because they are not known by the government means they do not pay tax. Because they don't pay tax, then they are not in the government radar. But a primary school teacher teaching here in Kangemi is not to a government. They pay tax. So the government, probably using that indicator, calls you as a teacher, you have more wherewithal than a farmer in Bomet. The government forgets that you are not living in your own house. You're paying rent here in Kangemi. This tea picker is staying in their own house. So by common man's level, who is better? Is it a farmer who owns 3 acres in Bomet and they're picking their tea, or is it this primary school teacher?
Yeah.
So how do you then put the primary school teacher's child to a level where they now they're in a lower band, so they have to pay more in the universities? And this one for Bomet, because they're not known by the government.
Yeah.
Government doesn't have any of their data. You know where government should have begun? We also long for a situation where we will target everyone once. We would want to use the resources that we have properly. But you don't wake up one day and decide, because we don't have money, we have to get a name, we have to get something. No. You first begin by doing the work. Do the work. Get all the data of the parents. Understand their economic situations, so that then we are making decisions and not inconveniencing other people. And that is what is ailing our funding model. The next big thing that is ailing our funding model is a conversation about the cost of programs in our universities. And we have said this, and we will continue to tell William Ruto, it does not cost 720,000 shillings to do any medical course in this country. It only costs 480 in Makerere here. It costs 400 in Daystar, everywhere. Why are our public universities charging our parents an arm and a leg?
Okay, but why?
That is why I'm asking. But why? Because nobody is willing to do the dirty work. Get into the accountability problems. How do you explain that Nairobi University is having for example, 9.8 billion? And these are reports that came to the task force.
Yes.
Your entire income is 9.8 billion. You're using 9.6 on staff. Who does that? What company operates like that? Weren't we interested in having conversations about what makes economic sense for us? Why are we operating as if it is a market, just because there are inputs, we just put in inputs, we just put it. It is not like that. We must be competitive. We must give costs that really make sense, because the idea, even beyond universities, is access. Can we make as many young people as possible access education and training? But we cannot give universities blank checks. The other conversation, and parents of university students really need to listen, and listen carefully, because you're parents of adults. It does not mean that you will not take part in these conversations.
Yes.
It is government that negotiates these CBAs. Parents are never involved. So parents will not be charged for people who negotiate CBAs for political expediency. You want the lecturers vote, so at that electioneering here, you sit them on a table, and then you have a conversation, you raise their salaries to please them, and then you come and charge the parents. Who does that? Can the government start respecting the people who are fueling this government? Can we see a government that respects the parents of this country? Can we see a government that respects the taxpayers? When you're making decisions, it is not everything about the vote. It is not everything about the vote. It is everything about the aspirations of the constitution. How many more youth? I have a text here which it is very emotional. A young man texting me is doing nothing in Eldoret. They don't have 100 shillings to eat. Then you want to wonder with me why the young people are committing suicide in this country. Why, if you don't eat today, you don't eat tomorrow? How will you even go to school? And then you have government officers sitting on tables doing nothing apart from shouting on microphones on rooftops of cars. It is not acceptable. It isn't acceptable.
Janet, what will it take for matters to do with education finally, like you say, for everyone to be put on the table and discussions to be held? Because now we're talking about the new funding model, that one day we woke up and there was a funding model that was there. There was no, we're told there's a means testing. No one understands it, including those who are supposed to implement it. Then we get to a point where you're saying politics, education being politicized and all that. When do we just sit down and say, guys, this is where we are, these are our problems. We've used help, it has issues, let's fix problems with help because it has worked before, we've used it for a very long time. Let's fix the problems with it and continue with it. Why does it seem as though every other time we need to come up with a fancy, swanky name just so we say we fix?
It is a shallowness in it, and when we understand the tone at the top, as I have always kept saying, fortunately or unfortunately, in Africa, key sectors such as education and health have relied on one man called the president. And that is a sad state of affairs. Even if you look at an analysis of how African presidents were judged in the past, they are judged along social sectors. What decisions did you make when you were president? You made a decision to support education. Is that the tone that you gave? That no, infrastructural development cannot come before. We cannot prioritize infrastructural development than we do to education.
I see I'm sorry, Janet, but I see a deeper overall encompassing problem here, that we will see the same problem replicated across sector, whether it's education, whether it's health, whether it's infrastructure, whatever the case may be. If there is no direct will to have some of these things done, if the development agenda is not front and center, if the protection of livelihoods of people is not front and center, if making sure that the most vulnerable in society, in communities are kept. I mean, I often say that if you're not doing those things, you have no business running government. That if you're not making sure that these things are taken care of at the forefront and then deal with these other things as they come, then you have no business doing this. But until and unless that becomes a priority, we will complain and lament, for the longest time.
And it
seems a reset needs to happen.
And the more, and people ask me, Janet, why do you talk politics of education? It is my understanding that we must politically profile education because the people that make these decisions are politicians. That is a fact. If it were not for that, the constitution is very clear. Anybody that comes there would not even touch it. But when you have people that the only thing they think about is how am I going to come back to power? How am I going to put so much in my pocket? What is in this? Even if we skip 1 year of like now, I can tell you their psychology, and you'll call me back to confirm. In 2027, just moving before we go to the elections, all this will be restored in the budget. All this will be restored in the budget, so that somebody will say, "Simulisema education tumerudisha." But excuse me, for 2 years when you absented this money from the sector, are you accountable for the children that fell out of the framework? Are you accountable for the poor quality of education that was delivered?
Yeah.
Are you accountable, or you just want where people are clapping for you and people are kneeling for you to cry so that then you will restore the resources and tell people, simulisema tax nimeangusha, simulisema education nimeangusha. What is this? I mean, it is not okay. And the sooner people understand that a lot of these decisions are so much related to the political decisions that you make, the good for all of us. So that when you go into that health sector and there is no medicine, please do not see medicine. See the person that you voted for. If your child is sitting with you at home right now, don't see the school. Don't go and quarrel the head teacher. You're quarreling the head teacher for why? Nobody can keep your child for free. Even the head teacher, especially for those who have children in boarding schools. Can you start preparing for your children to be at home with you? Because you will not send your child to school and not accompany them with food.
Is this the
head teacher cannot feed your child from their own pocket. They also paid very little money. What do you want them to do? It is a collective problem as a country, and we have to see it for what it is. Someone is defunding education. Someone is taking us back to where we came from. Why won't we resist?
So, Janet, what's the recourse for education stakeholders like yourself? And what's the recourse for parents? Because it's a very painful subject. But we are only 3 years into, this government. We still have 2 years to go, assuming things don't change. So what's the recourse? What happens next? Or what do we need to do next?
We have written enough papers, as it were, I have even gone to court. We have done everything that we need to do. The only thing that we are now forced to do, we are forced to deal with our problems politically. Let us mobilize the people. Let us mobilize the parents. Let us sensitize the people and tell them this is not good for us. This is not working for us. This is sabotaging our children, because it is what it is. It is sabotaging our children. You do not defend my child, then you attack me with a portion meal. For what? So that the few resources I get there, I take them back to school. Stealing from Peter to pay Paul, it is not okay. And you know, civic education is very important. And the sad bit is, the people of my age and probably above are the people who feel very emotional about small things and things they really not need to be emotional about. That this is, you know, we are this tribe, we are voting in this pattern. And we thank God for the Gen Z, because the reasoning of those children, let me tell you, the reasoning of those children is what will help us. And I beg parents and I tell them, you cannot educate your child all the way to the university and